Hello and welcome to Business 360. I'm Shireen Bhan. The headlines that we're tracking for you this evening. The Sensex and the Nifty declined for the fifth straight session for the first time in 7 months. The Sensex down over 500 points, breaching 64,000 in intraday trade. The Nifty Bank Index turns negative for 2023. Two of the world's most influential bankers are bracing for higher interest rates and uncertain economic conditions. JP Morgan's Jamie Dimon says he's prepared for rates to go up by even 100 basis points, adding he does not know if it will happen, though. David Solomon of Goldman Sachs says there is great uncertainty right now, even as he remains optimistic in the long term. Israel intensifies its attack on Gaza. United Nations warns that hospitals in Gaza may be forced to shut down for the lack of fuel. Israel seeks the resignation of UN Secretary General after he said that the appalling attacks by Hamas cannot justify the collective punishment of the Palestinian people. It's a revolving door for CFOs at India Inc. Ajay Goel returns to Vedanta after a brief stint with Byju's. He's set to oversee Vedanta's restructuring exercise. Byju's appoints Nitin Golani as the new CFO as it hopes to wrap up the much-delayed FY22 audit process. Microsoft's quarterly revenues topped $56 billion at a growth rate of 13%. The cloud business drives growth as it beats estimates. Google's parent, Alphabet, reports $77 billion in revenue, clocking double-digit growth for the first time in a year, but a slowdown in cloud computing disappoints investors. Tech Mahindra misses estimates in the second quarter as the dollar revenue growth declines by nearly 3%. Margins at 4.7% also miss estimates. Festive cheer for the economy. iPhone sales cross 1.5 million in a week. Auto sales up 20% since Onam. Hotels clock double-digit growth and property sales remain robust. With days to go for the elections, we speak to the two men in the hot seat. Madhya Pradesh Chief Minister Shivraj Singh Chauhan says he does not aspire to be the Chief Minister and the party leadership will take the final call. Rajasthan's Ashok Gehlot says the Chief Minister's post is not leaving him and plays down the rift with Sachin Pilot. 42 U.S. states sue Instagram and Facebook parent Meta over the impact on children and teenage users, accuse the social media giant of contributing to a youth mental health crisis through the addictive and compulsive nature of their social media platforms. Well, all of that is coming up for you, but let's start with the market action today. And the sell-off continued on the Lal Street. So if you take a look at the Sensex and the Nifty, it declined for 5 straight days. And this has happened for the first time since March this year. That's the story. The Nifty down 160 points, almost 1% lower. The Nifty Bank, by the way, fell in line with the blue chips and it's turned negative for 2023. The Nifty Mid-Cap Index losing over 200 points and the Small Cap Index also down. Faring slightly better, though, ending over 0.25% lower. BSE companies have lost a market cap of 2 lakh crore rupees today and a total of 9 lakh crore rupees in the last 2 trading sessions. Prashant is standing by now to wrap up the market action for us. Prashant, we resumed trade after a break yesterday, but the markets continue to decline. What's weighing on sentiment?
Well, the selling from day before yesterday continued. That is Monday, which was a pretty poor session for bulls. We had a break yesterday and then we came back with wishy-washy kind of global cues. US markets were neither here nor there, not definitive. And we started on an okay-ish note. There was even an attempt at a bounce, about 45-50 bounce points, but it sold off pretty quickly and then never really recovered, down about nearly 1%. Bank Nifty a little better, but down about 0.75%. But mid-caps and small caps were down, but actually did the best. The small cap index will come up on your screen. That lost only 0.25%. That's been the strongest of the 4 indices all of this year, and it held its own, losing very little. Large caps which lost, no real, one color, hue or sector, subsector, etc. It was across the board. Infi, Cipla, Apollo Hospitals, NTPC, SBI Life, Aisha, some of the names. Metals as a pack were higher. Coal India, Tata Steel and Hindalco, although there was no real news flow. Maybe something with what's happening in China. Broader markets and what lost advanced decline was pretty poor, almost at comparable levels to Monday. Cochin Shipyard, HEG, there was Vector Foods, Data Patterns, Fusion Microfinance, Jubilant Pharma, MMTC, Safari, PG Electroplast, Repco Home Finance were some of the ones which got hit the hardest. And there were winners as well, so it was not all down. BSE almost at 1,800, Indian Overseas Bank, Welspun Industries. Welspun, big cut Monday. Today it recouped those losses and actually added, so technically strong signal. Delta, Amber, Angel, Bajaj Consumer, Sequent Scientific, and a few others as well. I want to sort of wrap this market wrap up with a few views, both from a global and local perspective as well. So this is Bill Ackman of Pershing Square, who runs a very well-regarded hedge fund. He tweeted day before yesterday saying that they've covered their bond shorts, but that's not what I'm focusing on. He says there is too much risk in the world to remain short bonds at current levels. The economy in the US is slowing faster than what recent data suggests. So this ties in with what many fear will be a much slower world economy sometime in the fourth quarter. Akash Prakash of Amansa Capital runs a few $1 billion here in India. He says the primary concern regarding India is valuations. India is now, along with the US, the most expensive market in the world, but ends on a positive note, says a wall of money is waiting to come in on corrections. And lastly, a technical view on India. Lawrence Belanco, well regarded at CLSA, the technical analyst, says some patience is warranted as the market works through a corrective phase of its price momentum peaks, which were registered in September. Through this corrective phase, weakness is likely to 19,200, 19,230 area, and potentially a retest of the 18,500 to 19,017 area could be seen as levels to add to new long positions. So not really giving up, saying perhaps this weakness has some more way to go, but at those levels it would be better risk reward once again. Back to you.
Prashant, many thanks for joining us. In fact, speaking of opinion, two of the world's most influential bankers are bracing for higher interest rates and uncertain economic conditions. JP Morgan's Jamie Dimon and David Solomon of Goldman Sachs spoke at a summit in Riyadh. Dimon says he's prepared for rates to go up by as much as 100 basis points, while also adding that he does not know if that scenario will play itself out. David Solomon, meanwhile, says there is great uncertainty right now, even as he remains optimistic in the long term. Take a look.
When I look at the financial situation, the fiscal spending, which is more than it's ever, I'm talking about the United States, but it's almost true around the world. It's more than it's ever been in peacetime by a long shot, with the highest debt levels we've ever had by government. And there's this kind of omnipotent feeling that central banks and governments can manage through all this stuff. I'm cautious. I don't think it makes a piece of difference whether rates go up 25 basis points or more. Like zero, none, nada. I think whether the whole curve goes up 100 basis points, I urge people, be prepared for it. I don't know if it's going to happen. But I look at what we're seeing today more like the 70s.
If you listen to the dialogue today, I say there's great uncertainty. And people always try to frame things. You ask the question very clearly, are you optimistic or are you pessimistic? Long term, I'm certainly optimistic, but I'm uncertain right now. And if you're a CEO and you're uncertain, you tend to be cautious about doing significant things.
Well, that is the mood currently, uncertainty weighing on the minds of investors. On to the action from the commodity space. Oil prices flat after signs of tighter US supplies countered economic data that dampened the outlook for energy demand. That's not all. Slowing European demand has offset worries of the Middle East supply disruptions due to the Israel-Hamas conflict. Let's shift our focus now to the big earnings of the day. Microsoft posting quarterly revenues of a little over $56 billion with a growth rate of 13%. Meanwhile, Google's parent Alphabet reported $77 billion in revenue, clocking double-digit growth for the first time in a year. The spotlight for both tech majors was once again on AI. So which company had the edge? CNBC's Arjun Karpal decodes the numbers for us. Arjun.
Microsoft and Alphabet both beating on the top and bottom line, but it was the tale of two clouds that was in focus for investors. Microsoft's Intelligent Cloud segment made $24.26 billion in revenue, up 19% year-on-year, and smashing past consensus. Azure revenue, meanwhile, jumped 29% in the September quarter, also ahead of consensus. Also helping Microsoft shares after hours was commentary around AI, the big focus for investors. CFO Amy Hood said AI usage led to 3 percentage points to Azure growth. Microsoft's early bets on AI clearly beginning to pay dividends here. Meanwhile, Alphabet's Google Cloud unit posted revenue of $8.41 billion in the third quarter, below expectations, while profit remained slim. While Alphabet's core advertising business remained resilient, it needed to show investors it could justify that massive 57% share rally we've seen this year. And the market clearly was disappointed by what it saw in cloud computing. Investors hoping to see the AI boom helping Google will have to wait a little bit longer too.
Arjun Karpal there on the Microsoft and Google numbers. A coalition of 42 American states have sued tech giant Meta for violating consumer protection laws. The joint lawsuit states that Meta used its features to hook children to its platforms and also deceived users about safety on its social media apps. The lawsuit seeks various remedies from Meta, including financial penalties. Back home, Tech Mahindra has posted a weak second quarter, missing estimates on profit, dollar revenue and margins. The tech major's dollar revenue fell 2.8% compared to the last quarter, while its constant currency revenue also fell 2.4%, missing expectations. And on to Axis Bank, numbers ahead of estimates in the second quarter. Abhishek is standing by now with the fine print. Abhishek.
Well, Shirin, as you mentioned, the numbers look really good when compared to other banks as well who have been losing out on the net interest margin. And Axis Bank has actually surprised positively on the net interest margin. It has beaten our poll in terms of NII and PAT by anywhere between 2% to 3%. And the loan growth on a YY basis as close to 23% is perhaps the best that you are seeing in last 29 quarters or even more. Deposit growth of 17.9% YOY is one of the best in last 7 quarters. Sequentially, the growth is anywhere between 1% to 2%. Advances growth 22.8% YOY and 4.5% sequentially. This has meant that the credit deposit ratio has actually improved to 93.9%, which is one of the highest in last 20 quarters. So the improvement in CD ratio this time around has aided the net interest margin as well, which has expanded to 4.11% when compared to 3.96% in the same quarter last year and about 4.1% sequentially. Analysts were working with a decline of net interest margin by about 5 basis points as per Kotak Securities estimate, and over here it's improved. You are not seeing improvement in ICICI or Kotak or other banks as well, so this is heartening to see over here. Asset quality, annualized slippage ratio of just 1.45% is the lowest that you are seeing in last 12 quarters. Analysts were working with a slippage number of 3,500 to 4,200 crore, but it has come in between 3,200 to 3,300 crore. Gross NPA ratio is at 30 quarter low and net NPA ratio is at 33 quarter low of 0.36%. Joining us now is Ashutosh Mishra of Ashika Stock Broking. Ashutosh, what do you make of the initial numbers that have come in?
So Axis Bank has surprised us on the NII front out there, and mainly led by continuously they are increasing their high-yielding loan portfolio, which has helped them to buck the trend on NII front compared to the other banks. And even on asset quality, there is a quarter-on-quarter slippage has come down, which has resulted into a lower credit cost in this quarter out there. So these are the two major reasons where they have delivered very good set of numbers, and because of which the numbers are above the street estimate.
Well, Ashutosh, as you mentioned, even in my preview during the day, I had been mentioning that the loan growth will be focusing on the high-yielding portfolio, and that has actually aided the net interest margin this time around. We also have Prakash Diwan, our market expert, with us. Prakash, how do you see the result, and what would be your expectation with respect to stock reaction tomorrow morning?
So I think certainly, as you said, it's a beat on all counts. Quality of book, the growth in the book, the CD ratio, and of course a few things. For example, the cost of funds has always been softer for Axis, given the huge favorable impact of the Citi acquisition. That has kind of started to show in terms of what it can do going ahead. So we had a couple of quarters of when the bank digested that acquisition, and now it seems like it's on its way to a faster trot in terms of growth as well. So I think loan growth is impressive. Quality of book, as I said, the cost of funds has been absolutely stunning. Overall, the market will probably like to reward this, but then we know the mood of the market these days. Even on Wednesday's session, today's session, there was not much that was happening for banks in spite of everything being good in the numbers, except for an SBI or some of the odd, smaller banks. So I believe the market will take its time to reward it as the mood changes, but it definitely says something which sets it ahead of ICICI and HDFC as far as performance is concerned. So if Axis deserves a little bit of a re-rating in terms of flows, it'll probably be visible tomorrow onwards. Of course, subject to, as I said, the mood of the market being positive.
Well, that's a word coming in from Prakash Diwan and Ashutosh Mishra. Back to you, Shireen.
All right, Abhishek, many thanks for joining us. That's Axis Bank and the reactions to the numbers. But staying with earnings, Network 18 and TV18 have reported their numbers, a loss in the second quarter, but this is largely on account of investments made by the group. Network 18 reported a 20% growth in revenue, and TV18 has seen its revenues rise over 22%. The revenue from the news segment has seen a growth of 20%, entertainment revenues up 22%, and subscription revenues up 12%. The news segment has also reported an EBITDA of 10 crore rupees compared to a loss of 5 crores in the same quarter last year. The standard disclaimer on your screens: Network 18 and TV18 are the companies that operate CNBC-TV18, the channel that you're currently watching. We will head into a break, but up next, Israel intensifies its attack on Gaza. The UN warns that hospitals in Gaza may be forced to shut down for the lack of fuel. That and more when we return. Israel has intensified its attack on Gaza, which reels from a humanitarian crisis. Over 5,700 people have been killed so far in Gaza alone. As per the UNICEF, the death toll includes nearly 2,400 children. The UN agency has called the deaths of children, and I quote, a growing strain on our collective conscience, end of quote. Meanwhile, hospitals in the war-ravaged enclave are on the verge of shutting down for the lack of fuel. As per the Hamas-run Gaza Health Ministry, 7,000 wounded and sick Palestinians face the risk of death. Israel has called for the resignation of UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres. This after Guterres said that even though Hamas's attack on Israel was appalling, it cannot justify the collective punishment of the Palestinian people. Israel has refused visa to UN's Humanitarian Affairs Chief Martin Griffiths as a consequence.
Nothing can justify the deliberate killing, injuring and kidnapping of civilians or the launching of rockets against civilian targets. It is important to also recognize the attacks by Hamas did not happen in a vacuum. The Palestinian people have been subjected to 56 years of suffocating occupation. I am deeply concerned about the clear violations of international humanitarian law that we are witnessing in Gaza. Let me be clear, no party to an armed conflict is above international humanitarian law.
Antonio Guterres, the UN Secretary-General. And with that, it is time for us to wrap up this edition of Business 360. Thanks very much for watching. Do stay tuned to CNBC-TV18. The news continues when we return.